released on the Sega Genesis in 1990 and then ported to the Master System and the Game Gear later, Castle of Illusion is the first in a series of Sega-developed Disney titles known as the Illusion series. The Genesis had only been out for about a year, and the Blue Blur was about a year away. If Sega was going to compete against Nintendo, it needed some star power. For a long time, there was really only one mascot who had the global relevance that Mario carried, and that was the mouse. The game had somewhat split development. Programming went to Sega of Japan, specifically R&D 6. But the direction and production of the game was run by Sega of America and Disney Software cooperatively. The game was directed by Emiko Yamamoto. Being her directorial debut, she was eager to show off her creativity with this project. It was my first time making a game, so I came up with ideas I thought might be interesting, things I thought would help flesh out the fantasy world, without being hesitant about how difficult or unconventional they might be. In that sense, I think that helped us make a unique game. She said, when interviewed about the game feels unique even to this day. It seems that they were given quite a bit of freedom in developing the game despite the amount of eyes that were on them as they worked. There were a few stipulations though. For example, Disney made it clear that Mickey could not be killed in the game. That's why the lives are referred to as tries. And when Mickey runs out of health, he is seemingly thrown off the screen. Disney must have been impressed with Yamamoto's efforts. She is now an executive producer at Disney Interactive and has worked on numerous collaborations over the years, including Kingdom Hearts and the modern Castle of Illusion remake in 2013. She imparted a unique feel on the series that was iterated on in titles for the Illusion series, even beyond the games that she personally was involved in. For example, the Master System ports credit her despite her lack of direct involvement, and while mechanically there are differences between the games, you can feel the influence of Yamamoto on the design. One of these days I'll have to do a retrospective on the whole Illusion series, but for now, we're just going to focus the remainder of this review on the Genesis game that started it all. Castle of Illusion is a side-scrolling, level-based platform game starring Mickey Mouse, who embarks on a journey to rescue Minnie Mouse from the evil witch Mizrabel. Mizrabel is jealous of Minnie's beauty and wants to use her machine to steal her... Wait, that's Banjo-Kazooie. Hang on a second. Yeah, it says that Minnie's beauty... Okay, so Rare totally stole this. Also, the manual says Mizrabel has a musty smell? Following his nose, Mickey finds the former king of the castle, who tells him, "She's all yours, bud, but to beat her, you're going to need to collect about 7 Chaos Emeralds and transform into Super Mickey." Wait, dang it, I'm getting confused again. What do these things do? They make a rainbow bridge. Okay, cool. To collect the 7 rainbow gems, Mickey will need to explore 5 worlds of illusion and defeat the Masters of Illusion that guard many of the gems. Although some of them are just sort of lying around. With goal in mind, Mickey enters the castle and opens the first door, which leads to the Forest of Illusion. Now we can come to grips with the controls. You can move left to right and jump. If you are carrying ammo, you can throw it to kill enemies, or you can jump on them. But unlike Mario, there is a little bit more to it. Once you're in the air, hold down and Mickey will come down butt first and bounce off of his enemies, killing them. Hold down and the jump button and Mickey will bounce much higher. This can be used to reach even greater heights. Mickey can also duck, which is great. Not all platformers can duck. But one thing Mickey cannot do, unless he is on a downward slope, is run. This is not a fast game. Mickey strolls along casually murdering mushrooms and the like with his butt stomp. Now at first I thought I would never get used to how slow he moves, but the game is built around the slower speed, and in some ways it reminds me of Ristar. Restar? Restar? Anyway, the other game where you walk, not run. Mickey can also swing from ropes, which is used periodically. I especially like it in the bookshelves level, as swinging there will turn the lights on and off. Occasionally, Mickey will also have to do some swimming, but be careful, you cannot attack while swimming. See? It says right here in the manual. This game looks gorgeous. Just some really stellar visual design. It's all the more impressive that this game is only 400 kilobytes. Most of the levels have parallax scrolling, and the depth of color in the presentation really gives the game a bright, cartoony appearance, which is appropriate. Mickey is always moving, even when he's standing still. There are lots of animation frames, including different poses and keyframes depending on his jump height and whether he is going up or down. Mickey's face is very expressive, and the whole game really does feel like a little cartoon. The only real presentation hiccups are when he is swinging on the ropes, as it feels like the scrolling does not quite know what to do with this complex motion. Enemies are mostly unique, and the game does not borrow as much from Disney lore and designs as you might expect. Sure, Mizrabel looks like the evil queen and you fight a giant, but most of the bosses and enemies, with few exceptions, only appear in this game. There are 5 levels in total. The Enchanted Forest is just what the name describes. The final boss is a tree trunk. He attacks by rolling across the screen and dropping acorns from his limbs. It's a pretty straightforward platforming level and serves as a good introduction to the controls and physics. Next is Toyland, where Mickey has to navigate blocks and dodge toy soldiers that look suspiciously like Woody from Toy Story. Unicycle riding clowns are also on the menu, as well as Jack-in-the-Boxes and airplanes. The level has a lot of puzzles related to manipulating the environment. There is the section where the switches flip the level over, and this is really cool effect, but it reverses the up and down controls, so make sure you take that into account when you crush your enemies with your butt. The boss is a hybrid clown Jack-in-the-Box that jumps around and throws springs at you. Butt stomp him to death, and you're on to the next level. The next area is called The Storm, but the name does not fit it in my opinion. The level begins with an approach to the woods under the ominous sky before leading inside an ancient aqueduct. Water pours from the ceilings, and later a torrent runs through the floor, and Mickey has to dodge the falling and flowing water along with the gnarly fish that jump around. Bats are back from the first level. I hate bats, by the way, and they're often put in places that would make a Kaizo Mario level creator proud. The boss is a totem tower that throws gremlins at you. The boss is tough, but if you learn the patterns, you can kill the gremlins before they jump a second time. The next 2 levels run in and out of each other, the library and the dessert factory, interconnected through milk bottles and gems. The dessert factory has candy-related obstacles, and the library borrows some enemies from previous areas but adds these little letter A's that are really hard to deal with, as they jump almost exactly the right distance from Mickey where you want to try to jump on them. The boss is a candy-themed dragon. I think it's a dragon. He pops out of the milk in random patterns. Once you know how to read his attacks, he goes down pretty easily. The last area is the castle itself. You descend down into the dungeon of the castle, facing castle-themed enemies and obstacles to reach the bottom. The area is a huge maze and really pushes the platform mechanics to the limit. Jumps are tight, and you have to use the stage to build momentum while dodging enemies that seem to show up out of nowhere. The boss is the giant, and he is onto your tricks about butt stomping. He blocks the stomp with his arm, so you have to bait him into attacking with his yo-yo. I think it's a yo-yo. Before his attack animation ends, you have to jump on him then. He holds the 7th gem, and with it, we are ready to face Mizrabel. Before we wrap up, let's talk about game feel and control. It definitely takes some getting used to. Mickey is a little slippery, and you really have to commit to your movements. But this is a Sega game through and through. Nintendo games tend to be more player-friendly, but Sega expects you to learn the game. There is little room for error. The game fully expects you to fail, game over, and then get further the next time you play. I beat the game across 3 play sessions, but it really should have been 4. I made it all the way to Mizrabel on my 3rd run, and knew that I was not going to be able to learn her patterns with the lives I had remaining. So I'll admit it, I used a save state. But every playthrough that I did not cheat on, I could feel myself improving and learning the game. It was becoming muscle memory, and in my final run, the first few levels just flowed by easily. Bosses that were hard became easy. This very old school approach to gaming was Sega's bread and butter back in the day, and it's one of the reasons that their games held a certain mystique. Sega games were not for everyone, and this game embodies why. You're probably not going to beat this game your first time, but you'll beat it eventually. This is a testament to the perfect pairing of the controls and the level design. Except this bat. Screw this guy. Ms. Rebelle embodies this philosophy. Like the giant, she only gives you a small opportunity to attack, and you have to have confidence in your skill or she will wreck you every time. You just have to fail a few times to learn how she works, but once you learn, she goes down easily enough. Transformed by the gems back into a good witch/mouse, she saves Mickey and Minnie from the collapsing castle. Minnie gives Mickey a peck on the cheek and roll credits. The last scene is the curtain coming down and Minnie and Mickey in the theater waving at the player. I did not play this game growing up, so I had no nostalgia attached to it when I played it for the very first time. I played it about 8 years ago. My uncle gave me a box full of video games that he had stored in his attic, and the box had this game in it. I popped it into my Genesis, and immediately I could tell that this was a special game. It balances the line between challenging and pattern memorization with solid level design and controls. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it just feels special to play. The sound also deserves specific praise. The Genesis often has a reputation for bad sound, but it is obvious in games like this that the issue was not with the console. The game was a big deal back in the day, and it's easy to see why. Coming out swinging against Nintendo, Sega partnered with the House of Mouse to release a game that is really solid. It is even more so considering that many of the creative minds involved were just getting their feet wet in the industry. It should not really have worked. How many times have we seen a Japanese developer directed by a Western studio produce something with this level of polish? It's not a fast game, and its length is solely based on the difficulty curve of learning, pushing the game, dying, and then going further each time. In the future, I need to check out the ports to the Master System and maybe even the remake. I would absolutely recommend this game to any Disney or Sega fan, especially if you like that old school Sega loop. The game's balanced, tough but fair platforming rewards players who improve their skill with each subsequent playthrough. It stands above most licensed games as a genuinely great game and a classic. Play it if you can.